boys' side, please. Right here.
Wait. No way, it's almost as if every prayer time changes every day. Does? Yes. Every single day. What if for tomorrow? Is it a 7:07?
Test. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil kareem. وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us what is beneficial to us and to benefit us with what He has taught us and to increase us in knowledge. Ameen. First off, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure our shoes are on the shelf, not on the floor. Second off, we're going to make sure that that whole area over there is reserved for the sisters. So if you are a boy and you have a Y chromosome, you should be on this side of the room. How are you?
What time does the story end?
At Maghrib.
After Maghrib?
At Maghrib. Once we pray Maghrib, that's it. Then we have peace.
So then like after?
At Maghrib. When Maghrib is, that's it. That's not it. So, inshallah, we're going to be continuing the Women of Jannah series. So, before we start the new class, we're going to do a quick review of what we talked about last week. Raise your hand. Who did we speak about last week? Yes, Tommy.
Was it Maryam?
It was Maryam. And who is Maryam? Is she a girl from school? Is she a CEO of Pizza Hut? Who is she?
She's like, she's...
Okay, so we know her name. We know her name is Maryam. But who was she? What did she do? Why was she important? Is she important? Okay, why?
Because the angels brought her a kid.
Okay, so the angels gave her glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gave blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't give her a child. Who did give her a child though? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her a child. She was on the shelf. Yes, sir. She was on the shelf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed her with a child. And who was that child? Isa alayhi salam, the Prophet Jesus. Right? So she was the mother of Prophet Jesus. And the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam described her as being the greatest woman in the whole world. And we said last time, this is a very important thing to note, that it's not just something small, like, okay, she was really important, that's great, move on. No, she was the greatest woman of all time. Boys on this side, habibi. And some of the reasons for that, well, let's ask you guys, let's see if anybody remembers. Why was Sayyidah Maryam, why was she the greatest woman? Like, what were some of her attributes?
She was a virgin.
She was what?
A virgin.
Well, okay, I mean, just because you're a virgin doesn't make you a great person, but the fact that she was modest and chaste, that's what we say. The word in Arabic is iffa. Iffa means that you maintain your dignity. You're not going out, watching haram things, flirting with people, having relationships in secret and stuff like that. Sayyidah Maryam had the utmost chastity and modesty. She had iffa, right? And that's why some of her names are Maryam al-Batul, Maryam al-Adhra, right? That the Virgin Mary that we call her. And she had so much shyness and dignity that most people wouldn't even see her. She would stay in her room, right, worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and attending, listening to the classes that were happening in the masjid, but nobody would really even see her. Nobody would ever enter this except who would enter to help her and take care of her? Sayyidina Zakaria. Maybe we shouldn't move on to a new person today. We should just repeat everything we said last week. Sayyidina Zakaria, right? What was something that he saw when he came into her room one day? He saw her, she was doing something strange or something peculiar had happened. Yeah.
She was eating fruits and seeds.
Yeah, she was eating fruits that he never got her, number one, Right? And he's like, I know you're not going out buying stuff. You don't have no money. Where'd you get this? Number one. And number two, it was out of season. Where did she get this food from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this was one of the things of Sayyidina Maryam, was that she would just make dua and Allah would answer it immediately. Most of us, when we make dua, Allah will give it to us, but He's not going to make it fall from the sky. I make a dua, it might come true tomorrow, it might come true in a week, it may come true in a few years, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may not answer it until the day of judgment. Just give me hasanat and say, listen, I didn't answer it while you were in this world, because I had something better planned. Here's some hasanat. Sayyidina Maryam was like, I feel like watermelon from the sky, right? Very few people ever have that blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's do one or two more things about Sayyidina Maryam. So we mentioned that she was the mother of Isa. Who is Isa's father? Yes.
Nobody.
Nobody, right? Just like, alhamdulillah, nobody said Allah. I'm like, come over here, right? He had no father. And again, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showing His power of creation, that He created Adam. Adam had no mother or father. So if any Christian ever tells you, oh, Jesus is God or the Son of God, because like He has no father, okay, then Adam is a bigger God, yani he has no mother or father. Hawa had no mother, right? Like she was just created from the rib of Adam. Does that make her a God? No, astaghfirullah al-azim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her this blessing. When she gave birth to Sayyidina Isa, what explanation did she give to her people when she just showed up with a random baby they'd never seen before? What did she tell them? Does anyone remember? If no one answers this, we're not doing a new person today. Yes? Yeah, her answer was no answer. She said, I'm fasting, I'm not talking to anyone today. And every time they would ask her and they'd say, Maryam, how could you do this haram thing? Your father was a good person, your mother was a good person, how could you do this? What would she do? She'd just point to the baby. She's like, I'm not talking. You have some questions? Here's my baby. And they're like, كيف نكلم من كان في المهدي صبيا? How are we supposed to talk to a newborn baby? Like, are you crazy? And a miracle, and again, by the way, this miracle is not found in the Bible. I forgot who asked me last time. I think it might have been Awesome, but somebody asked me last time, right, about the miracles in the Bible and the Quran. We have some miracles in the Quran that are not mentioned in the Bible, and one of them, and this one's probably one of the most important ones, is the explanation for where did this baby come from. If I'm an atheist, for example, or I hate all religions, forget Christianity, I hate all religions. If somebody comes and tells me that this virgin gave birth to a baby, what's my first thought? Oh, she's lying. She's lying. She had a relationship with somebody and she's lying. She's not. There's no miracle. This baby's not. She did something bad, right? The Bible has no refutation to this. The Bible's like, oh no, he was a miracle child. The Quran has an explanation that when the people came and they were going to kill Maryam, by the way, this is something that I mentioned last time. Back then, committing this crime was punishable by death. Isa alayhi salam, from the cradle, he spoke. And he said, Inni abdullah atani al-kitab wa ja'alani nabiyya. He said, I am the servant of Allah. Allah has given me the book and He has made me a prophet. Meaning this is a miracle. The moment this happens, everyone shut up. Nobody ever denied who Isa was ever again. And this miracle is found in the Quran. It's not found in the Bible. Maryam alayhi salam, after she passes away, and this is the very unfortunate thing that continues till this day, that people took her as a goddess. People started worshiping her until this day. Not all Christians, but Catholics, there's almost 1 billion Catholics in the world, they worship her. They have statues of her. In Mexico, for example, there's a huge festival that they have, I forgot what it's called, where they have a huge statue of Maryam, and they bow down to it, they worship it. And this is, subhanAllah, like on the Day of Judgment, Allah is going to ask Sayyidina Isa, like, did you tell the people to worship your mom, to worship you and your mom? And Isa alayhi salam, we have to see this in Surah Tawbah, Sayyidina Isa will say, I can never say something that I have no right to say. If I ever said it, you would have known, Ya Allah. I only told them to worship my God and your God, meaning Allah. Isa alayhi salam never ever said, my mother is a goddess, worship, bow down to her, or I'm a God, or something, or I'm the son of God, or I'm the Trinity, number 3 of 3, or whatever this weird stuff is coming out with. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the final thing Isa says, and this is a big question mark for us, which we'll find out on the Day of Judgment, we don't know now, is what Allah does Because Isa alayhi salam says, إِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ. What is Allah going to do with these people, these Christians that worship Maryam and Isa and Jibreel? And he says, if you want to punish them, they're yours. You have the right to punish them, Ya Allah. If you want to throw these people in hellfire, they're yours. And if you forgive them, then you're the most forgiving. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He answers, He says, هَذَا يَوْمُ يَنْفَعُ الصَّادِقِينَ صِدْقُهُم. He says, this is a day that the genuine people will be rewarded for how genuine they were. What that means and what Allah is going to do with the Christians, how some of the scholars have interpreted is that if they were genuine Christians and they genuinely thought that this is what Allah wanted them to do, perhaps Allah will forgive them. But many of them, وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ, Allah says in the Quran, many of them are not genuine and they know the truth. And I've seen debates with Christians, they get caught in lies and they go sicko mode. It's very, very strange. They start going like, Jesus loves you. It's like, dude, calm down. We're having a conversation. The blood of Jesus. The blood of Jesus. Like, what? This isn't a conversation anymore. They just go, I don't know. It's weird. But in any case, this was last week about Sayyidah Maryam. Now, the hadith Rasul alayhi salatu wasallam said, many men have perfected their religion, but only 4 women have perfected their religion. Who are those 4? Yes. So before Maryam is number 2, but who is number 1? No, Khadija is number 3 actually. Who's number 1? Eve? Nope. We talked about her 2 weeks ago. Come on, sisters, you're all sleeping. Don't make me get you guys off the wall. Asiya, right? Who's Asiya? The wife of? The wife of Fir'aun, the wife of the Pharaoh. Asiya bint Muzahim. She was the first woman to perfect her religion. And she was the wife of the most evil person in human history. The second person is who? Maryam. Yeah. And the third person, what did you say, Sharif? Khadija. And that's who we're going to talk about today. Now, this is really interesting because when we say 4 women have perfected their religion, one of them was Khadija. You know what's really interesting about that? Khadija lived and died before the 5 daily prayers were ever prescribed to us. Right? The 5 prayers came to us in the Isra and Mi'raj. Khadija died before the Isra and Mi'raj. She died before the prescription of fasting Ramadan. She never fasted Ramadan. Because Ramadan came later on, a few years later, in Medina. So she never fasted Ramadan. She died before zakat was prescribed to us. She never paid zakat. She died before Hajj was prescribed to us. She never did Hajj. Here's a question for you. What are the 5 pillars of Islam? Salah, Siyam, Zakat, Hajj, right? It's pretty much 4 out of the 5 that she never even did. How did she perfect her religion? We're here, we're praying, we're fasting, we spend thousands of dollars just to go to Hajj. We kill ourselves to fast in Ramadan, right? We pay our zakat. And Khadija beat all of us. How? How did she perfect her religion and we didn't? When we're doing more of Islam than basically she did.
Well, it would have been more hard of a time, like, including that she was like the wife of like most evil men in the world. So like,
No, we're talking about Khadija, Habibi.
Oh, Khadija.
No. She was definitely not married to the most evil person in the world. Huh? By the heart. Okay, that's one answer. Her heart maybe was much more pure than ours, which I'm willing to believe. What else? What's another explanation? How did she perfect her religion? And there's no salah, there's no zakat, there's no hajj in her religion to begin with. Clearly she knows something we don't, because I'm busting myself out here praying 5 times a day. She didn't do that. What did the Rasul ﷺ say is the most important thing in the religion? Did he say it was salah? No? Okay, but what did he say is the defining feature of Islam, of your religion? Ad-Din, what's the second word? Ad-Din al-Mu'amala. Our religion is how you treat people, how you deal with people, right? And the Rasul ﷺ said, I have only come to perfect character, to perfect akhlaq. And another thing he said, the best of you in the eyes of Allah, أحسنكم خلقا. The best of you to Allah are the ones who have the best character. Khadija didn't do any of those things because obviously if Allah commanded her to, if she lived to see those, she would have done it 100%. But her khuluq was so much better than everyone else's that she beat everyone to Jannah. And I mentioned this last week, and I'm going to mention again, that the Rasul ﷺ said that Maryam was the best woman in her time, right? And Khadija is the best woman in our time. Meaning, if you're going to take in general, Maryam was the best woman ever, but Khadija was the best woman in her time. Nobody could beat Khadija. Yes?
Who was the fourth?
Who is the fourth? We'll save that for another time. So now we know 3 out of 4. Who are they? One more time. Who's the first person? Guys, if we're going to sleep, Pharaoh's wife. Okay, what's her name? You don't know. SubhanAllah. Asiya, thank you. Number 2, who? You know her. Yeah, know me. Maryam, Jazakallah khair. Number 3, Khadija, radiallahu anha. Number 4, we'll wait and we'll see, inshallah, in the future. Who is Khadija? Why is she important? What do we know about Khadija?
Wasn't Khadija Sayyidina Muhammad's wife?
Good. Is that why she's important?
No.
Okay, well, it's one of the reasons that she's important. It's not the only reason. She was the wife of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam married many people. What number was she? Was she the 3rd, the 5th, the 12th? Who was she?
The first.
She was the first, right? Number 1. What else do we know about Khadija?
She was old and rich.
She was old and rich. Well, she was older. She wasn't old when she married the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And she was rich. Khadija radiallahu anha, her full name is Khadija bint Khuwaylid. Meaning her father's name was Khuwaylid. She was from the Banu Asad tribe. The Banu Asad tribe is a very noble tribe of Quraysh. By the way, Quraysh is the main tribe, and then there are sub-tribes in it. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, does anyone know what clan he was from? He was from the Quraysh, but from which tribe?
I just forgot.
Okay. The Banu
Hashim?
Banu Hashim, good, inshallah. The Banu Hashim. So he's from the Banu Hashim, Khadija was from the Banu Asad. Interestingly enough, her father and the Rasul's grandfather were friends, were very good friends. So her father Khuwaylid and the Rasul's grandfather Abdul Muttalib were very close friends. But her father passed away. He was killed in one of the crazy wars the Arabs used to get into, which most of them had no rhyme or reason. They would just get into wars for no reason. And Khadija's father passed away. But she was, number 1, she was very, very intelligent. She was very resourceful. She was very kind and generous, dignified, and her khuluq was really, really good. So she married at a very young age, and she married a man, his name was Atiq. She stayed with him for a bit, and he passed away. So she's a widow now. So she got married again. She had a second husband. She stayed with him. She even had some kids with him, by the way. A lot of people don't know this. She had a son named Hind, right? And he passed away too. So now she's a widow. She, after her second husband passed away,
I have a question.
Yeah.
What happened to her kids?
So the ones that from her previous marriages, actually, I think all of them accepted Islam eventually. So I know for a fact Hind became a Muslim when he grew up, but they all grew up. So
they were all adults by the time she married Muhammad.
yeah. So this is what I was getting to. After her second husband passed away, she took a break from getting married and she wanted to focus on her career, right? And she inherited some money from her husband, and she inherited some money from her father. So she decided to get into business. Khadija radiallahu anha got such a good reputation from business that they used to call her the Princess of Quraysh. The Princess of Quraysh. Even though Quraysh didn't have like a kingdom or anything like that, her reputation got her the name the Princess of Quraysh. And she was so successful in her business. I was reading this and I had to, I'm like, did they get the number right? When she would send her caravans to the winter and summer trips, you guys know that in the summer they would go to Shem, they would go up to Syria, and in the winter they would go down to Yemen. So they had a winter trip and they had a summer trip, and this is where they would do their business. Her caravan equaled all the other caravans in Mecca combined. Right? Like her, that's how, they said they estimated 800 camels. I want you to imagine 800 camels walking in a line. Each one has like goods and merchandise that she would go, she would take it, she would sell it, and she would bring back, she would make a profit. But however, she herself never used to go. She would hire people, and they would go on her behalf. Why did she hire people? Why didn't she go herself?
Because like she may die going.
She may what?
It may be like risky.
So it's a dangerous trip, number one, and it's another thing that's important about Khadija. She's a woman. And people back then didn't respect women, right? They didn't take her seriously. If she tries to go do business, they'll be like, what are you doing here? Go back. Where's your husband? All right, so she would hire people, and they would go on her behalf. There was a problem with doing that, though. What do you think the problem is with hiring people to go do her business for her?
People would they would take her money.
Yeah, they were kind of sneaky with it. She would give them $100, let's say. They come back with like 50. It's like, what happened to the rest? Oh, collateral damage, merchandise lost. It was a nice new watch you got. Yeah, thanks. Right? So she never used to trust the people, but she had no choice. Nobody would take her as a woman seriously to go up and do the business. So she would hire people, and they would go and they would do, business, but she never made the profit that she's like. She could feel that maybe they're taking a secret cut, maybe they're skimping off some of her money, all right? And there's nothing she could really do about it, right? Other than, okay, I gotta find more honest people. I gotta hire better people. In this time, people in Mecca, very noble and rich and powerful people, kept proposing to her. Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt proposed to her. She said, no. She declined. Abu Sufyan, he was the leader of all the caravans of Mecca. He proposed to her. She's like, no. Amr ibn Hisham, one of the most noble people of the Banu Makhzum tribe, he proposed to her. She's like, no. And her family would be like, Khadija, what gives? Like, these guys are balling in cash. And, they're really good families, really good bloodlines. Like, why are you saying no to them? What was her reason? Why was she saying no? I need the sisters to wake up. This is a class about sisters. Why was she saying no? Yeah. They weren't what? Maybe they just wanted her money. That's possible one reason. I mean, they were already rich though. Yeah. They weren't truthful. For those that go to my Sunday school class, right? What is the most important reason to marry a woman or to marry a man?
To get children?
No. Maybe for me, but yeah.
Their faith.
Their iman, their Islam, their faith, right? Like how much are they religious, right? If a guy comes and he's rich and he's powerful and he's handsome and he doesn't pray and he doesn't care about Islam, get out of this. This doesn't his money he's going to use to hire a lawyer to try to take when you divorce him. His handsomeness is going to go to another woman because he's not faithful, right? It's not going to benefit you. Yeah. I can't hear. Boys, you're talking in the back and I can't hear. Their personality? No, the most important thing is not even their personality. It's their iman, it's their khuluq. And Khadija saw these men and they're very noble people, but she's like, I don't think they're not honest people, they're not trustworthy, they don't have good character. I'm looking for someone who has really good character. And by the way, Khadija is a very intelligent woman because years later, these three people are all going to become enemies of the Prophet. Amr ibn Hisham, does anybody know who that person is? The guy who, Yunus, put your hand down. Who's Amr ibn Hisham? He's one of the three people that proposed to Khadija. She said no, she's like, I have a bad feeling. Does anyone know who he is? Nobody knows his name nowadays.
I've heard of him before.
He's not a sheikh, no. He's Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl, the Rasul gave him this name, the king of ignorance, right? This is the most evil person in Islam, the person who kills the Muslims. He's going to try to kill the Prophet, right? He proposed to Khadija all those years ago, and she had a bad feeling. She's like, I don't think he's the right person. Like, she had 20/20 vision. Most of us, we see like a person and, there's just red flags and like, oh, he's perfect. she saw him and she's like, no, I feel like he's bad news. And years later, he's going to try to kill the Prophet, and he's going to kill companions, and he's going to torture people. He was a sadistic maniac, and she said no. So Khadija, she focuses instead, she's like, I'm just going to focus on the business, and if Allah gives me a good husband, then I get a good husband. Enter the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. At this time, he's not the Prophet, he is Muhammad ibn Abdullah. He's 19 years old, and he just starts his career. What was the Prophet's career? His very first job?
Like selling stuff.
Before that?
But wasn't he like a farm?
Not a farm, specifically. What?
Shepherd.
A shepherd, right? He would just take out sheep and goats. He would herd them, feed them, bring them back at the end of the day. This was the lowest paying job in Mecca. Like, you do not get paid. Actually, we have narrations where some of the people would do this, a 12-hour shift, taking the sheep all day, and when they get back, they get paid with a handful of dates. Like, all right, thank you. Like, that's not even a meal. You can't talk about minimum wage. Like, there is none of that. The Rasul ﷺ started off like that. He would be a shepherd. As he got older, slowly, he started experimenting with buying and selling, and he got pretty successful in that. Meanwhile, Khadija, she's having trouble finding honest employees, right? Her employees are just not honest. So she puts out basically like a job posting, like, hey, I'm looking for a merchant who's going to take my caravan to Asham, to Syria, and sell my stuff, make a profit, and come back, and I'll give him a good cut. So the Rasul ﷺ hears this, and he decides, like, would you trust me to go? And Khadija, she sees him, she sees like, okay, he looks like an honest man. I don't know him that well. So she says, okay, you can go, but I'm going to send one of my other employees with you. Because I don't know you. Like, you seem like a nice guy, but she's very smart. She don't just trust the first person you see. Don't take the first offer, right? So she sends a man named Maysara. So Maysara was the name of her employee, and he goes with the Rasul ﷺ. He takes Khadija's like gigantic caravan, and Muhammad and Maysara, they go to Asham, right? And when I say Asham, we usually say Syria, but actually this part was actually Jordan. They went to Jordan. And no, Urdun, not Mikael Urdun, right? So when they go, Maysara is watching the Prophet ﷺ. And he notices a lot of interesting things about him. Number one, he doesn't lie, ever. Which is something businessmen always do. You don't believe me? Go to Facebook Marketplace. Everything is free, mashallah. Then you read this defense, like, not free. Why are you lying then? Go buy a car. Oh, best car ever. Like, okay, great. It's like, oh, we don't have it available. It'll be here in 2 weeks. And it has 100,000 miles on it. Like, why are you lying? Right? People who are trying to buy and sell, they're always lying. You have to go and you have to check and you have to. I bought a car earlier this year. It lasted me 2 weeks. Travis was even worse. This Indian guy sold me a car. It lasted me 2 weeks. Lost thousands of dollars on it. Anyways, people always lie. So Maysara was watching the Rasul ﷺ, and he knows, number one, he doesn't lie. Number two, he was actually doing his best. Right? A lot of times employees, they don't do their best. They just want to get paid. They're just there. Right? They don't, they're not like actually trying to make the business succeed. They're just, hi, welcome to Denny's. Can I take your order? No, we don't have that. All right, get lost. I don't care, right? So the Rasul ﷺ was doing a good job. Another thing Maysara noticed, which was very interesting, no matter where the Rasul ﷺ went, there was always a cloud above him. And he noticed this. He said, isn't this weird? It's a hot, sunny day. We're all sweating. And Muhammad is walking in the shade, and this cloud is following him. And if he stops, the cloud stops. And if he goes, the cloud goes. And then when they get to, where's modern-day Jordan, the Rasul ﷺ goes to this tree, and he sits under this tree. Hamza. He goes to this tree in Jordan, and he sits under it. And Maysara is watching the Prophet. He's sitting under this tree, and he's resting. He's relaxing. And a monk comes out of nowhere. And the monk goes up to Maysara. He says, who is that man? And Maysara is like, oh, he's Muhammad ibn Abdullah. He's from Mecca. And the monk says, no. It is written in our scriptures that the only person that sits under this tree is a prophet. Like, this tree is a special tree. Nobody sits under this tree unless he's a prophet. By the way, this tree is still in Jordan until this day. You can actually search it up on Google. It's a huge tree. It's like 1,000 years old. It's like, the branches are out. I mean, they say this is the same tree, but I haven't seen it myself, but you can see the pictures. Yeah.
Can you sit under it?
Huh?
Can you sit under it?
Yeah, now you can sit under it. But it was written in the scriptures that, that they had, that if you go and you sit under it, the next person that will sit under is going to be a prophet. So, in any case...
What's the name?
of the tree. I forgot what it's called, but if you just search up tree that the Prophet sat under Jordan, you'll have a big picture. Watch out, watch out. Maybe, yeah, you could try searching that. But it's still there till this day. And actually, Jordan, I've been to the country many times. It's very famous for having what we call Rumiyat trees. These trees are called Roman trees because they were around when the Roman Empire was still around. Very old trees. This is one of them. When the Rasul ﷺ comes back from his business trip, he doubled the profit Khadija usually made. So if she usually made $500,000 from her other employees, the Rasul ﷺ came with $1 million. And she was very, very pleased, very happy. Like, wow, this guy, he really knows what he's doing. So she asked Maysara. She asked him, and another interesting point, that when the caravan came back, Maysara came and he had both the profit that he made and the profit that the Rasul made. So Khadija asked, where's Muhammad? And he said, oh, he gave me his stuff to give to you because he's too shy to speak to you. Like he doesn't want to, he's too shy. So she said, come, tell me about Muhammad, like how was he? And Maysara starts like explaining everything. Oh, he's very honest, everyone liked him, right? He was the cloud and everything. So she was very impressed by him. And she starts talking to her friend about him, right? This is what girls always do. When they like someone, they sit with their bestie and they start like this and this and this. So her best friend's like, Khadija, why don't you just marry him? She's like, stop, I'm old, whatever, what are you talking about? And her friend was like, Khadija, no, like, marry him. You're not that old, like you're 15 years older than him, right? He's 25, so that makes her what? 40, right? So, you still got many years in you. Clearly you like him, you're impressed by him, he has what you're looking for, why don't you marry him? So Khadija actually proposed to the Rasul ﷺ, which is where the question people always ask, oh, does the proposal always have to come from the guy? Do I have to send a lot of hints and then he has to come on one knee? No. If you think that the person is right for you, can you stop flipping the bottle? Then it is permissible for a woman to propose to a man. Yeah. It's not sunnah, it's just permissible because the Rasul ﷺ proposed to women and women proposed to him. So we know that both is allowed. And Khadija, when she sent her friend to ask the Prophet, and her friend Nafisa, she went to the Prophet and she was like, would you be interested in marrying Khadija? And he said, yeah, but why is she interested in me? Like, she does know that I'm broke, right? Like, I'm not rich, right? And she said, no, she likes your honesty, she likes your integrity, she likes your khuluq.
He was a prophet at the time? Or no?
Was he? No, this is all before he was a prophet.
Oh yeah, because he became a prophet when
Yeah, this is all. Can we stop flipping the bottles, guys? Subhanallah.
Yes, sure.
Anyways, so he agrees and he wants to pay her a meher. He's like, can you give me some time to pay a meher? And Khadija actually says, I don't need a meher. That's fine. Right? Which is another question. Do I have to pay a meher? If she doesn't want a meher, she doesn't get. But the Rasul ﷺ actually insisted and his family got him 20 camels. He got Khadija 20 camels and he says this is a gift. He also gets her another gift, and this is a very important gift, let's remember it, don't forget it. He got her an onyx necklace, right? It was just a necklace with a bit of onyx, which is a pretty little stone. Yeah, they didn't have diamonds or anything like that back then. This was the prettiest thing that she could give her. He got her a necklace. Does anybody know what Khadija's gift to the Prophet was? So he got her this as her gift. She got him a gift too. What was it? Not money. Yeah. Not a camel, no. Zayd ibn Haritha, mashallah. She gifted him Zayd ibn Haritha, her slave boy. Right? And the Rasul ﷺ fell in love with Zayd. Zayd loved the Prophet, and the Rasul ended up adopting Zayd. Right? So Zayd became the Rasul ﷺ's like adoptive son. And he was literally the gift of Khadija to the Rasul. She saw that he liked Zayd a lot. She said, do you like Zayd? And the Rasul ﷺ, yeah, I love Zayd. She said, then he's yours.
He's my son.
And later on he adopts Zayd, and Zayd is very happy and he chooses to stay with the Rasul even when his actual family come to take him back. But that's a separate story. So, now the Rasul and Khadija are married. Do they have any kids?
No.
Well, not yet.
I mean,
Okay, I'm saying, do they ever have any kids?
yes.
Okay, how many kids do they have?
6.
6. What named them? Can anyone name the Rasul's kids?
I mean, I don't know.
Can someone name one of them? Yeah. Fatima was the youngest. Very good. So Fatima was the youngest.
Can I check Ibrahim?
Ibrahim is the only child that Rasul ﷺ had that was not with Khadija. Ibrahim was the daughter of Maria, which will marry like years and years later. But all of his other kids are from Khadija.
What about
Yes.
his last wife?
Huh? Abdullah, right? Abdullah was her second son, and he actually passed away as a baby. He didn't live very long. Yeah. Zainab was the oldest, right? The oldest daughter was Zainab. Ruqayya, very good. What else?
No, not for that.
Al-Qasim, right? Al-Qasim was the first son she had. Al-Qasim grew up to be about 2 and then he passed away. So we have Zainab, Ruqayya, Al-Qasim, Abdullah, and Fatima. We're missing one more. This is the one that everyone sleeps on. Yeah. Kulthum, very good, mashallah. So Kulthum was their other. All of his kids were from Khadija, right? Al-Qasim and Abdullah passed away at very young ages. Later on, he will marry Maria. This is years and years later, and he has Ibrahim, but Ibrahim also passes away because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that he won't have any sons. This is important. Why? Because every single person that is a descendant of the Prophet is also, by extension, a descendant of who? Khadija. Because he had no other kids from any other woman. Did they have a happy...
No, I mean no. No.
Here's a very interesting thing.
Yes.
Well, let me hear it first. Who thinks they got into arguments? Who says they didn't? Alright, here's another question. Did the Rasul get into arguments with his other wives? Okay, that's an easier one. We have many ahadith about the Rasul getting into arguments with all of his wives, including Aisha, Hafsa. Hafsa, he even divorced her, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Jibreel, and he said, listen, like, I know you're mad at Hafsa, but Allah says you have to take her back. So, right, it's actually kind of a funny story, right? But Khadija is the only wife that the Rasul ever had that he never, ever got into any argument with her. The only time he ever got upset, and he wasn't with her, is we have one narration where the Quraysh were having a big festival for Allat and Uzza, right, which were their gods. And the Rasul was so upset about this, he told Khadija, we're not leaving the house. Like, no, we will not worship Allat and Uzza. We're not going to leave this house. And Khadija's like, sure, no problem. Whatever you want, we won't leave the house. We'll ignore their festival. This is the only time. He's not even mad at her, yani. This is just the only time he got upset. And it was because of shirk. He says, we swear, we'll never leave the house if they're worshipping Allat and Uzza. Yeah.
How so he didn't get mad when his son died?
How's he going to get mad at, like, nobody killed his son. He didn't go up to her and was like, you didn't feed him? Yeah. So, now, they live these many, many years, and now the Rasul is 40. He's now the same age Khadija was when she first married him. Actually, their eldest daughter, Zainab, right, she got married, and Khadija takes her necklace that the Rasul gave her, and he gives it to Zainab. She gives her necklace to Zainab, like, this is your wedding present, so she passes it on.
How old was she at that time?
Who, Zainab? Or Khadija? So Khadija is 15 years older than the Rasul, so if the Rasul is 40, how old is she?
55.
55. Yeah.
Wait, but, so like, oh, so she was 55 when she passed out her bracelet?
Whenever Zainab got married. I'm not sure when she got married. She definitely got married before Islam, so a little before she was 55. But she passed down this necklace. Enter the time right before the wahi comes down. The Rasul ﷺ is now going to Ghar Hira. Has anyone ever been to Ghar Hira? You've been?
No, I'm doing this.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, I thought you meant like me. When the Rasul ﷺ, Judy, when the Rasul ﷺ would go to Ghar Hira to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? He would go there for a few days. Can we stop flipping the bottles, guys? Seriously. I know you guys have low attention. It's not that deep. Alright? When the Rasul would go to Ghar Hira to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would go there for a couple of days and his food and water would run out. So Khadija would go up the mountain and bring him water. And she was 55 years old. Now, if you go to Ghar Hira today, and they have stairs and railings and it's a whole tourist site, grown men get exhausted. Actually, one of my friends went there and he tore his tendon. He's like, I'm too old for this. Right? Ladies nowadays, they're 30 years old and they're like, oh no, I'm retired. I can't go for a jog. A'udhu billah, right? Khadija was climbing up this mountain just to deliver her husband food. Like, what a wife, what a woman. And she was, and by the way, the other women in Quraysh would make fun of Khadija, like, wow, your husband hates you this much that he's gonna go up to a cave for a whole month because he doesn't want to be with you, right? And she would ignore them, and she was supportive of her husband. She didn't say, are you crazy? You want to go up into a cave, right? I'm trying to plan a camping trip right now. Everyone's calling me crazy, like, and she was like, okay, no, if you want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm with you. Until the day, the most important day of Khadija's life, which is the day the Quran comes down, Laylatul Qadr. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam gets the wahi, he gets Quran, Iqra, and he is absolutely terrified. It's a very scary experience for the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He runs down the mountain. Now, his uncle is in Mecca. Abu Talib is right there. His best friend Abu Bakr is there, right? All of his friends, his relatives, his uncles, and all of them are in Mecca. Who does he run to? Khadija. No question. I'm going straight to Khadija. He comes in, guys. No picnics in the back, please. He goes to his house and he's just Zambiluni, cover me up. He's terrified. Who's the one that calms him down and explains what's going on? She says, La yukhzik Allahu abad. She said, I swear Allah is not going to disgrace you, because he's freaked out. He even thinks that I'm going crazy because what I just saw and what I just experienced is supernatural. So either I'm going crazy or I've been possessed by a devil. And Khadija, she says, I swear Allah is not going to humiliate you. She says, you take care of orphans, you honor your guests, you help people with their needs, right? You're always truthful. She says, no, you have this complete. She says, Allah is going to take care of you. And she takes him and she says, I'm going to take you to Waraqa ibn Nawfal. Who's Waraqa ibn Nawfal? Her cousin. And he was one of the only people in Mecca that knew the Bible. She takes him to Waraqa ibn Nawfal, and Waraqa ibn Nawfal immediately, he says, what he's describing is the same angel that went to the other prophets. Meaning what? You're a prophet too. Interestingly enough, I forgot to mention this. Before Khadija married the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she actually had a dream that she saw the sun coming into her house. Like the sun was setting and it came into her house. So she went to Waraqa and she says, I had this strange dream, can you explain it? And Waraqa said, okay, from what your dream is saying, it means two things. Either you're going to marry a very righteous person or you're going to marry a prophet. And years later, he's going to explain to her, yes, your husband is a prophet. And he actually passes away a few days after this incident. Khadija was, and some people have described this, and I think it's very accurate. Khadija believed in the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam before he even believed in himself. So when we say she was the first Muslim, we really mean she was the first Muslim. She was the absolute first Muslim, even some say even technically maybe even before the Prophet ﷺ, even though he never disbelieved in Allah, right? But she was so supportive of him and she understood and she took on that role immediately. We have a very interesting narration. The Rasul ﷺ is still getting used to his new role. He's a prophet now. This isn't an easy thing. One day, he tells Khadija, like, I'm scared that Jibreel is going to come again. So she tells him, if he comes again, tell me. Like, if you see him, tell me. So one day he sees Jibreel in his house. Like, literally, he sees Jibreel and he tells Khadija, he's right there, I see him. And Khadija looks, and what does she see? Nothing. So she says, okay, come here, sit right next to me. So the Rasul sits right next to her. And she says, do you see him? And the Rasul says, yes, he's right there. So she says, okay, now sit on my left side. So the Rasul sits on her left side. She says, do you still see him? And he says, yeah, he's right there, I see him. So she says, okay. Then she goes behind the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Omar, come here, I need your help. Face them. So she sits behind the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam like this. And she does this. She puts her arms and legs around him. And in some narrations, she even pulls her hijab off. And then she asks the Rasul, do you see him? And he says, no, he's gone. So she says, "Uthbut ma hada bi shaytan." She says, good, now we know it's not a shaitan. Like you can be calm now, we know it's not a devil. What did she just do? What was this weird experiment she just did? How did Good. Yes, very good. And again, Khadija is very intelligent. She understands these things. When a shaitan is around, this is why the Rasul ﷺ said that if you ever undress or if you ever take off your clothes, he said say Bismillah before you do that, so that if there are any shayateen in the area, they can't see you. They're banned from seeing you. Why? Because the shayateen are disgusting, and this is what they live for. Angels are the exact opposite. The moment a man and a woman are intimate together, or one of them is taking off or showing her, the angel leaves. So Khadijah's like, okay, let's see if this is a shaitan or not. So the moment she touches him, and she's hugging him, Jibreel has too much modesty. He's too shy to be in the room. So he leaves. So she said, see, it's an angel. And she proved it to the Rasul ﷺ. Like this is an amazing thing. She's a very smart woman. She sticks with the Prophet ﷺ as soon as, even when he announces Islam publicly and they're harmed, their people insult them. Yeah.
Question about why is she wearing hijab before the 90 came out?
Good. So when we say hijab, the hijab was very common practice for all women all over the world. Only in modern times now is it known to be a Muslim thing. Right? Even if you look at pictures only 100 years ago in London, in America, right? When you see the pilgrims, what are the women wearing? They always used to cover their head. This was something the whole world used to do. And from her fitrah, meaning her natural inclination towards Islam, most of the things she did were in line with Islam already. So she already had a hijab even before there was mandate of hijab, right? And she used to pray even before there was a prayer. That's just from her. She used to give charity even before there was charity, right? The people of Mecca used to call her Tahira. That was her name, the pure one. That was her nickname. Every night before, when she would close her shop, people would line up outside of her house, and she would just give people what they needed. I'm hungry. Okay, here you go. People would come to her. Listen, I'm trying to get married. I can't afford a mahar. She's like, okay, I'll pay for it. She was just that generous. And this was before there was zakat, right? So now we're kind of understanding why she perfected her religion. When Islam gets announced publicly, Khadija is perfectly clear that I stand with my husband. I'm a Muslim. I'm a believer. She would pray openly with the Prophet ﷺ, and she didn't care what anyone said. All of her kids became Muslim, but and her sister, actually she had a sister named Hala, and her sister became a Muslim. Very interesting thing that a lot of people don't know, Khadija also had a brother. And the Rasul ﷺ called her brother the Shaitan of Quraysh. Her brother was the exact opposite of her. Nawfal bin Khuwaylid. He used to torture the Muslims. Can you believe that? And the Rasul ﷺ called him the devil, the Shaitan of Quraysh. What we learn, what we see, and we're going to see example after example, your relationships and your relatives have nothing to do with where you're going to in the Akhirah. Asiya is a queen of Jannah. Who's her husband? Fir'aun. She's at the bottom of hellfire. He's the Costco greeter of hellfire. And they're married. Khadija, she's another queen of Jannah. Her brother is the devil of Quraysh. He tortured Abu Bakr. We have a narration that he tied up Abu Bakr and Talha and beat the snot out of them just because they were Muslim. And this is Khadija's brother. So very interesting, that this happened. But in any case, she stayed firm with the Rasul ﷺ, and as we know, the pressure on Islam got more and more and more, and it built and built until it reached a breaking point where the Quraysh imposed a complete boycott on all Muslims. And they basically put all the Muslims in a concentration camp outside of the city. Nobody's allowed to buy from them, no one's allowed to sell to them. Nobody can give them food, nobody can give them water. Nobody can marry their men or marry their women. Nobody's allowed to contact them. They're stuck in this little crack in the canyon, basically, this crevice. And they stayed there for 3 years. And I mentioned this many times in my class, yeah. What if what?
What if it rains? Can't they drink water if it rains?
Yeah, they can drink water, but if it doesn't rain, you're gonna die of thirst. This was one of the most difficult times for the Prophet ﷺ. Khadija had a nephew who wasn't a Muslim at the time, and he would basically smuggle food into this area. And she would get a little bit of food and she would give it to all the Muslims and she wouldn't eat. She refused to eat. She would give the food to her children, And she herself, she wouldn't eat. And they stayed in this boycott for 3 years, to a point where they have to start eating grass. Like imagine you're out and you're just pulling grass off the ground. And this is, whatever food they could get, she wouldn't eat it, she would give it to her children. So much so that when the Rasul ﷺ, when they actually got out of the boycott, she lost so much weight. Like she was basically a skeleton of what she used to be. This is our mother, Khadija. And by the way, all of the wives of the Prophet are our moms. Like they're the mothers of the believers. We treat them like our moms. So they did this to our mom. The Rasul ﷺ, one day he's sitting with Khadija, and Jibreel alayhi salam comes down. Hamza. The Jibreel alayhi salam comes down and he tells the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, Allah gives his salam to Khadija and I give my salam to her as well. Tell her that Allah gives her salam. Now, we get salams from Mufti Mink and we freak out. Like, oh my God, he said salam to me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is asking the Prophet ﷺ himself, give salam to your wife Khadija. He never does this for any other person. For Aisha, when Jibreel comes, Jibreel says, give Aisha my salam. So Jibreel gives salam to Aisha. But for Khadija, Allah gives salam to Khadija. And if you follow the sound of Seerah, right, I actually just posted one today about this incident, right? And when she sees this, she says, Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam, tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. When she hears this, she says, oh Allah, you are salam. Like, how are you giving me salam? You are salam. And from you is salam, and upon Jibreel salam, and wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Right, this is an honor to Khadija. But unfortunately, after the boycott, and before this, he says, tell her that Allah promises her a pearl palace in paradise. Yeah, she gets a palace in paradise that is literally a gigantic pearl carved inside to be a palace. Like this is something that you could never get in this world. And this was a gift to Khadija that she gets a pearl palace, and there's a huge description of it that you could ride in its shade for 70 years and you'd still be in it. Like it's not like a house here. This is like an amazing gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But not long after this, she passes away. The boycott was just too much for her. She's 65 years old now, and she was basically starved to death. And she passes away, and the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, they said after she passes away, we didn't see him smile for almost a year from how upset he was. Like this is the love of his life. He was with her for many, many years. He was with Khadija for 20-something years, and he didn't have any other wife. It was just her. And she passed away, and Allah promised her Jannah, but it still hit him very, very hard that she died. And this was his wife, his first wife, the love, the mother of all of his children. Years later, he's going to marry Aisha. And when he marries Aisha, he loves Aisha. He loves Aisha so much. But every time he would slaughter an animal, he would say, this is for us, and this is for Khadija's friends. Go send it to Khadija's friends. And if Khadija's sister would visit, the Rasul would get so excited. He's like, oh, come in. And he'd sit, and they'd start talking about Khadija for like hours and hours and hours. Aisha was watching this, and she said, I never got jealous from any other woman, but this lady Khadija, the Rasul would not stop talking about her. So one day, Aisha, she's like, like in the other room listening, and the Rasul is just talking to Khadija's sister, and they're remembering Khadija, and like, yeah, good times, Allah yarhamha, we miss her so much. And after she leaves, Aisha comes to the Rasul ﷺ, and she was a young girl. We know that when she married, she was very young. She comes to the Rasul ﷺ and she says, Ya Rasulullah, why do you keep remembering this old toothless lady when Allah has given you someone better than her? So the Rasul ﷺ, and he says, Wallahi, Allah has not given me someone better than her. Now he never said this to her, but she opened, like, listen, you're gonna, don't open this door, right? She opened this door. So the Rasul said, Wallahi, Allah has not given me someone better than her. He said, she believed in me when everyone disbelieved in me. And she supported me when everyone abandoned me. And she was the mother of all of my kids. And he just keeps going and going and going and talking about how much Khadija was the best person ever. And Aisha said, after that day, I never mentioned Khadija ever again. Okay, she learned her place. Like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. All right. She's like, oh, someone better than me. She's like, no, sorry, no. This is, even Aisha, like this is Aisha. She's the mother of the believers. And Aisha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned verses of the Quran about Aisha. And the Rasul loved Aisha. But the Rasul made it very clear, and he was very loyal. Like, Khadija's on top, number one. Another incident that showed the Rasul's love for Khadija, how much he loved her. If you guys remember, his oldest daughter, what was her name? Zainab. Zainab was married to a non-Muslim, Abu al-As. And he didn't become a Muslim, he wouldn't become a Muslim. And he wasn't against the Prophet, but he just wouldn't become a Muslim. But he loved Zainab a lot. They loved each other, but he was just not a Muslim, and she was. When the Battle of Badr happened, Abu Jahl was forcing a lot of people to go to war, even those that didn't want to go. And he threatened them with, like, if you don't come to the army, like, it was basically, what do they call it now? Like in the Vietnam War. I forgot what the word was. The drafting, barakallahu feek. It was like a draft. Like Abu Jahl is going around to every house like, oh, I noticed you have a young man who has a sword. Why aren't you coming, right? So he forced Zainab's husband to go to war against the Prophet. Who won at the Battle of Badr? The Prophet. So he captured a lot and he took them as prisoners, a lot of the people on the disbelieving side. One of them was Abu al-As. Abu al-As was tied up and they captured him. And the Rasul knew he wasn't actually trying to kill him, but he said, listen, here's the deal. If you guys send money to Medina as a ransom, we'll let you go. And if you don't have money, just teach 10 people how to read or write and we'll let you go. So Abu al-As, he sends a message to Zainab. He says, hey honey, your father has taken me prisoner. I need you to bail me out. So Zainab says, I have something, I'll send it and we'll bail you out. So the Rasul is in Medina and he's getting the bail money and he's letting the prisoners go. And then a messenger comes and to the Rasul and says, this is from Zainab. And he opens the package and what does he find? He finds the necklace. And he just starts crying. The Rasul he was crying, like very rarely did he cry publicly like this, like in front of everyone. And he just could not help it. He saw the necklace, and who did the necklace belong to? Khadija. This was Khadija's necklace. He starts crying and crying and crying, and he asks permission from the Muslims. He says, is it okay if we send Abu al-As and the necklace, just send them back? Like, he asked permission, is it okay? Like, it's not fair, I don't get to make that decision, but is it okay? And the companions, they saw him crying, and they said, yeah, no problem, Abu al-As is fine, right? Send them back. Right? And he sends the necklace back with Abu al-As back to Zainab. Eventually, Abu al-As will become a Muslim. All right, many years later. But this just shows you how much love the Rasul ﷺ had for Khadija. One more story, inshallah, to describe how much he loved Khadija. At the end of his life, when the Rasul ﷺ finally conquers Mecca, right? There's no more enemies. They've all been defeated. Everyone that ever harmed him or tortured him or tried to kill him, right? They're in the Rasul's hands now. If he wants, he could kill them all. And what does the Rasul do? He spares them. He forgives them. He says, "Idhabu fa antum tuluqa." Go, you're all free. No, but he's going to spend some time in Mecca. He's not going to go straight back to Medina. So, he's in Mecca, and he hasn't been in Mecca for a decade now. And he's going to camp there for at least a week. I can't remember exactly how long. And the people are saying, okay, where do you want to stay? Do you want to stay at my house? Do you want to go? His old house, the kuffar took, is like, do you want your old house back? Like, where do you want to stay? And the Rasul says, everyone leave me alone. And he takes a tent, and he goes to the graveyard of Mecca. He finds Khadija's grave. He puts his tent right next to Khadija. He says, this is where I'm going to stay. Like literally, like he's like, I don't want to stay anywhere else. I'm just going to set up a tent next to my wife's grave, and this is where I'll stay while I'm here in Mecca. Huh? So they're in Medina, right? But they all live in Medina, but he's now taking his time in Mecca, right? And he chooses, I don't want to sleep anywhere else. I want to camp next to Khadija. And I mean, there are so many incidents, and we hear that the Rasul ﷺ appreciated her gifts, appreciated her friends and used to send them gifts, appreciated her family, right? He would always praise her and talk about her to a point where nobody would ever dare say anything bad about Khadija because just how much love he had for her. And she really was the first Muslim in everything. She was the first person to pray, really. Like when the Surah Al-Muzammil came down, Ya Al-Muzammil, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, right? The first person that stood with the Rasul and prayed was her. Meanwhile, other companions, I mean, Abu Bakr's wife, when she saw him like worshipping and becoming a Muslim, she thought he was crazy and they ended up getting a divorce. Khadija could have easily been like, yeah, my husband's being a little weird right now, right? She supported him in everything. And she encouraged him and she calmed him down. And the wahi, the Quran would come in her presence, in her house. She was the one that explained to him what the angel was, what the Quran was, that Allah would never abandon him. She was everything to him. She was the love of his life, so much so that even when his other love of his life said something against Khadija, he put her in her place. Like, no, let's get something straight right here. All of this, right, when we say that the Prophet ﷺ was the best human of all mankind, right, the best creation, for him to have this kind of love for another person means that person is very special. And I don't want to hear it. There's no love story, no romance novel that's going to come close to what the Rasul ﷺ had with Khadija. She really was, and she gave everything for the sake of Allah. She was very rich. She had a very nice house. She was a very successful woman. She was the princess of Quraysh. And for the sake of Islam, she gave it all up to a point where she basically starved to death. Right? We as Muslims now, we don't want to go through any hardship. It's time to pray. Oh, the floor is dirty. Oh, I'll pray at home. You don't even want to sacrifice putting your head on the floor. Right? Khadija radiallahu anha sacrificed her whole life. Everything, all of her money, all of her wealth, all of her prestige for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And this is, again, this class is about the greatest women of Islam. But this has nothing to do with like, oh, well, I'm a boy, so I don't need to learn anything from this. Absolutely not. Right? For the boys that are in front of me, one day you're going to come to a point where you have to pick a wife. Right? Pick a Khadija. Pick someone that's going to support you, that's going to stand with you for Islam, not for anything else. And the Rasul didn't pick her because she was rich, and she didn't pick him because of anything else. They saw what in each other? Righteousness, piety. They saw honesty, they saw integrity, qualities that we don't care about these days. We just want to know, like, oh, is she pretty? Does he go to the gym? I was having a conversation the other day with Muslim families and stuff, and they were like saying how Muslim girls are rejecting guys because they don't have a gym membership. Like, man, I would have been single by now. That was the case. Like, this isn't the criteria. This isn't what we should be choosing, and this isn't what we should be judging each other on, right? And again, the Rasul ﷺ was handsome, and he had this, but this wasn't the most important thing. And when she did become a Muslim, and when she did join him, she supported him with everything. Everything, in every sense of the word. And because of that, the Rasul ﷺ responded with that with equal amount of loyalty, that even after she passed away. I mean, some people tried to paint the Prophet ﷺ, and I talked about this when we talked about Aisha. Some people tried to paint the Prophet like he was just, you know, this sexual person who just wanted women and stuff like that. Like, a'udhu billah, he had nobody but Khadija for 20 years. She's 15 years older than him. And he had nothing but loyalty to her after she passed away. What benefit? He could have just like, Khadija who? I've moved on, right? I have whatever now. No. So this painting is so wrong. It's not true in the slightest. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the day was the one that appreciated her, promised her paradise, promised her palace in paradise, and gave her salam directly. He did not do that with any other woman or any other person, as far as I know, other than the Rasul ﷺ, that he sent Jibreel, tell the Prophet to say, I give salam to Khadija. She's our mother, she's our mom, we should be proud of her. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us like Khadija. Like, if we can be even a fraction of Khadija, this amazing person that perfected her deen, if we can get a fraction of what she was, we'd be very, very happy. If anyone has any questions, inshallah, we have a couple of minutes before Maghrib. And hopefully the pizza's on its way, but they did tell me that they're struggling a little bit picking up the pizza. I don't know what's going on today. Do we have any questions? Nothing at all? Is anyone going to name their daughter Khadija? It's a beautiful name. By the way, that's another thing. Khadija was a unique name. Like, nobody was named Khadija before her. Like, there were a lot of Fatimas. Fatima was a very common name. Khadija, there was like, it was a unique name. Yeah.
I wasn't like this.
Oh, you didn't have a question? Khair, inshallah. So we now know, out of the 4 women that the Rasul ﷺ said perfected their religion, who was the first one? I want to make sure we get this. No, number 1. Asiya. Number 2. Ziyad. Who's number 2? No. Who's number 2? Try again.
Me?
Yeah, you.
My phone friend.
Maryam. Who's number 3? Khadija. We'll talk about number 4. Not next week. Next week we're going to talk about someone who wasn't one of the 4, but yeah. Number 4 is actually Fatima. Ahsan. Number 4 is Khadija's daughter. So out of the 4, one of them is Khadija, the other one's her daughter. But next week we're not going to talk about Fatima, we're going to talk about a different woman, inshallah. By the way, just because the Rasul said these 4 women perfected their religion doesn't mean there are only 4 good women in the world, the rest are evil. Like, that's not true. Like, some people are some Andrew Tate stuff to like, all women stink. Like, no. There are great women throughout history, but these were the top of the top. And we're going to talk about next week, inshallah, one of my personal favorite women in Islamic history. I can't wait to share. Amazing woman. Huh? No. We'll talk about her, inshallah, but thank you. Keep a halal. Any other questions or comments? Inshallah, if you, like I said, I always do this plug. The Sound of Sirah, especially the early chapters, feature a lot of Khadija. So, follow up, especially we touched upon her business and how she ran her business and how she was known in Quraysh. So check it out, inshallah, The Sound of Sirah. It's on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Samsung Podcasts, Audible, everything. Yes. Okay, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين